Hi, I'm Em.
And my name is Bea.
And this is
Fangirls Anonymous. A quick warning, this podcast is not for kids.
We get into some pretty explicit stuff.
But if you're still with us and into that, welcome.
I am so excited for today's episode.
What are we going to talk about?
So, Bea and I thought it would be kind of a fun thing to do in this podcast. A thing called Fandom Exchange, where we both have a fandom that we really love to read fic in and be a part of, but the other person doesn't necessarily have a lot of experience with that fandom. And we thought it might be fun, especially for people who are part of the fandom listening. So this week I thought it would be cool if we talked about The Mandalorian, because I've gotten really into The Mandalorian lately, and Bea doesn't necessarily know too much about it.
Nope, I have never watched the show. It's not necessarily my particular sci-fi cup of tea. I am excited to hear about it, though. I love hearing about things that other people are excited about, so let's get to it.
Yeah, it's super fun. So, you're more of a Trekkie, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the kind of the feeling I got. So my father's first movie that he ever saw in the movie theater when he was 4 years old was the first Star Wars movie. That was the feeling that I got growing up in my family. It's kind of it's just part of our lives, the Star Wars movies. And I was pretty disappointed with the last three films that just came out from Disney. I loved The Force Awakens, but I did not like the last two. But when The Mandalorian started coming out, it really felt like Star Wars again. And that's why I started really getting into it. And I especially started getting into it when I saw the final episode of season 2, which we will get into. So, The Mandalorian, if you haven't watched it yet, it's a spin-off kind of series from the Star Wars universe, and the main character is this Mandalorian who is named Din Djarin. He's a bounty hunter, and that's how you are first introduced to him in the series, which is directed by Jon Favreau, by the way. He's done a lot of stuff. He was the director of the first Iron Man movie. He's Happy in all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. So, true, large, gigantic spoilers for this show. If you don't want to hear us talk about in-depth stuff about The Mandalorian, don't listen. But let me just tell you the story, basically. So Din, who is the Mandalorian of the show, he...
I have a question just based on that statement.
Oh.
Are there other Mandalorians not in the show?
Oh my god, yeah.
Okay.
So he's not... The title is funny because it's called The Mandalorian, but he's not the only Mandalorian. There are so many different types of Mandalorians. There are even different cultures of Mandalorians in the show. There's a character named Bo-Katan who's part of a different group of Mandalorians that follow slightly different rules than the Mandalorians that Din hails from.
So a Mandalorian is more like...
It's a creed.
Okay, so they're like
it's
space
like a religion,
paladins,
actually,
and not in the Voltron sense, in the D&D sense.
Remind me of a paladin.
It is a type of warrior who draws strength from whatever their creed is. It usually is somewhat a religious thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Kinda. I would say that the Mandalorian creed, the main thing for them is this is the way.
Okay.
They follow their creed to a T. It's not necessarily the thing that makes them go forward. I could be wrong, but it's kind of a religion, it's kind of a creed, it's kind of a set of values, basically. It's like their culture.
Okay. Now that I've thoroughly derailed your train of thought,
that's okay.
We are following this particular Mandalorian.
Yes, we are following this Mandalorian who comes from a specific group of Mandalorians. So there used to be Mandalore, which was the planet that Mandalorians were from. Actually, let me just read you this quote that I found from this very fun webpage that I found from mystarwarscollection.weebly.com titled How to Speak Mandalorian. Because there is actually a full language that
Neat.
somebody for Disney, I think, made. Let me read this to you. Mandalorians originate from the Tong people of Coruscant. Under their leader, Mandalore the First, they conquered a planet in the Outer Rim and named it Mandalore. It is a temperate yet desolate world. They are a warrior culture, their belief system strongly based on honor and clan. To be called a Hatun, or coward, is the worst possible insult. Though family and clan is important, bloodline is not. Their culture does not rely on the survival of their bloodlines, but on the survival of the Mandalorian culture itself. Mandalorians assimilate other species into their culture when they conquer a new planet or a people, lending credibility to one of their society's most fundamental views on the importance of family and adoption. The Mandalorian language has remained virtually unchanged despite the fact that they have, through war and conquest, come into contact with thousands of other cultures and languages. In present times, Mandalorians inhabit a variety of worlds spread across the galaxy, yet their culture and language remains intact. So, Din's faction of Mandalorians kind of went a little bit hardcore. Part of what makes Din a fascinating character as an audience watching the TV show is that he can never remove his helmet in front of another living creature. And that's part of the creed. Once you become sworn in as a Mandalorian, you can never remove the helmet. But Bo-Katan's clan of Mandalorians can easily take off their helmets whenever they want to. And you have no idea what he even looks like until the end of season 1. But he's still fascinating to watch. Just to have a little summary of the story, he's a bounty hunter. He gets a bounty for this little creature that looks like a baby version of Yoda from the original series. And it's not baby Yoda. People were thinking or theorizing that maybe it was baby Yoda. It's actually a little creature named Grogu. And Din has this really intense protective desire to take care of Grogu for some reason. It's instant father-son bonding time, basically. It's very sweet. It's actually some of the sweetest things you can find in the Star Wars fandom ever, in my opinion. And also, it doesn't hurt that Grogu is a freaking adorable character design. So adorable. Basically, they develop a really adorable father-son relationship, but then so they have a lot of adventures around the galaxy. Lots of, we need to get to this place to do this thing. Oh, we need to get to this place to do this thing. A lot of stuff like that. It's very cool. But then Grogu gets kidnapped at the end of season 2 by this guy named Moff Gideon, who actually has this thing called the Darksaber.
Is that a lightsaber?
So the Darksaber is a lightsaber, but it's completely pitch black with the outline of it being white. And
that's very unnerving.
It is very unnerving. And whoever wields it is basically the ruler of Mandalore.
That's extra unnerving.
Yes. And Moff Gideon has it. And that's the reason why Mandalore is completely gone, because all the Mandalorians escaped and are off on all of these planets. And anyway, through a series of weird events and accidents, and because of all of these people that Din and Grogu have kind of become acquaintances / friends with on their adventures, Din is able to fight off Moff Gideon, and therefore he becomes the ruler of Mandalore because he holds the Darksaber.
Awkward.
Yeah, it's a little awkward because he tries to give it to Bo-Katan, who Bo-Katan's whole character is, I want to have the Darksaber. Yeah. She was in Clone Wars, apparently. I haven't seen Clone Wars, but she really wants that thing. But you can't just give it to somebody. You have to earn it through battle. This is the Mandalorian way. But Din is able to get Grogu back. But then
that's the important part.
Luke Skywalker comes in at the very end of the very last episode of season 2 and takes Grogu away without saying anything and whisks him away to learn the ways of the Jedi. And it's a very sad scene because it's a father saying goodbye to his son. So that's all of what we know about the story so far. That's the canon of The Mandalorian so far. I found a couple of funny things on this website on the language of Mandalorians. So Sukuigar is the phrase used to represent hello in Mandoa, and it literally translates to "you're still alive," which is so Mandalorian. But then Rey Tor Shami is the phrase for goodbye, and that literally translates to "maybe we'll meet again." I love that so much. It's my favorite thing about the language. It's so like always happy and always sad at the same time. Also, by the way, if you read a lot of the fan fiction surrounding Mandalorian, you really just get used to the language. You kind of start learning the language a little bit because really good fanfic writers and authors love to use the language as much as they can. It's awesome. So, some top fics. I just wanna say I am 105% in the deep end when it comes to Din Luke fanfiction. When Luke pulled off his black hood wearing those Chanel boots, okay, and started like just having that look within everything stopped. Everybody was like, "Oh, that's our new ship. That's everybody's new ship. It is so fanon, it's not even real." Okay, like everybody decided to start shipping Din and Luke, and everybody decided to start thinking that Luke Skywalker is a gay character, which I wholeheartedly agree. And it also just makes his character more interesting, in my opinion. Like he's just a more interesting character now that he has another side to him that I didn't have growing up, with him. So, because I really only know Din Luke, these are all Din Luke fan fictions. So I'm not gonna get into any other fanfic.
Are there
So
are there other ships in the fandom? Like, what were people shipping before this bombshell dropped?
some people were writing Luke Din fan fiction
Before he
before.
appeared.
Yes, that's actually the first one, the first fic I'm going to talk about. And I actually talked about it in an episode before. Some people did. They crypt keyed the fuck out of it. It's amazing. But from what I've seen on the AO3 relationship search engine, it's a lot of you and Din, like the reader and Din, or female OC and Din.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting. Wait,
Until
is it that they just don't like the chemistry between him and female characters on the show, or is there just no female characters on the show?
no, there are definitely more female characters in the show than males,
Oh,
actually, I would say. Yeah.
interesting.
But they're all gay.
That's okay.
Everybody thinks that they're all lesbians. So, yeah, he has more chemistry with a guy he hasn't talked to than any of the female characters in the show, and that kind of says something. Okay, so I would say that the top tropes in Din Luke fanfiction are number one is found family or adoption. That's kind of the main theme of the entire show and the entire Mandalorian creed. But fic authors tend to also just like that trope in any fandom. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be up to 100 in this kind of stuff, in these kind of fics. There's also a lot of canon compliance. So a lot of events right after season 2 finale fics they're everywhere. What does Din do immediately after parting ways with Grogu kind of question. There's a lot of bodyguard Din, which kind of makes sense with his character. The thing about Din as a person, as a character, is that he is scary and like violent when he needs to be, but because of Grogu, and not just because of Grogu, but like personality wise, he's very protective. He's actually a kind bounty hunter, and I don't know how they did that. Like it's kind of amazing that they were able to achieve that. Anyway, I would also say that another trope that is found in a lot of Din Luke fanfiction is kindergarten teacher Luke, and these are almost always AUs. Like there's no like if he's a Jedi, he's not gonna be a kindergarten teacher. In any AU that is set maybe in modern times or maybe like a different universe, like they're in a universe where they can travel between planets, but lots of places need kindergarten teachers, right? And he's just not a Jedi. But then if he's a kindergarten teacher, then Grogu's in his class and Luke has to meet his dad, right? So that's a lot of it too.
I haven't watched Mandalorian, like I said, but I have seen the first two of the new trilogy. Is this playing off the fact that it's established that he did try and create a Jedi school? Is that the idea here? Is that, oh, he was a teacher, so we'll just make him a teacher?
Oh, so actually there is a lot of there are a lot of fics where Luke is just starting the building of his school, because he's young
Mm-hmm.
when he comes in. Did I forget to say that?
No,
He's
I
like,
had assumed.
oh, okay. He's like 5 years older than when we last saw him, maybe at most. Like yeah.
I'm assuming you're saying when last we saw him in the original trilogy,
Yes,
not
yes. He's
because
young. He's not the old Luke that we know from the trilogies
yeah.
that we have had recently.
I mean, spoilers, but I was pretty sure that he died. So if he
He
was
dies
5 years
at the
older
end of
than
the
dead,
second movie.
I was gonna be really intrigued.
Yeah, so Din and Luke together live in a better timeline. Let's just
Oh,
put it that way.
good.
Okay, so Fics. Let's talk about the Fics.
Yes, please do.
I tried to get a good swath of a lot of different things in this kind of budding fandom regarding Din Luke shipping. There are a lot of good ones, even now, and it's only been like, oh my gosh, 5 months. It'll be 4 months tomorrow.
Huh.
Yeah. So the category for the most popular. Let's just do like the Oscars. Category 4 most popular. For a lot of fic reading with different fandoms and different ships, I really like picking out the relationship I want in a specific fandom on AO3 and then going into sort by and picking kudos. I love reading fics that people actively want to punch a button to say, hey, I loved this, you know? So Separate Ways by Pepperprints is the most kudos fic of the Din Luke ship and tag. Let me just read you the summary. With Moff Gideon defeated and the Darksaber reclaimed, the rumors of newly named Mandalore Din Djarin spread through the galaxy, along with the stories of the child he carries with him. Determined to meet him, Luke Skywalker arrives on Mandalore, but before he can get any closer, he has to prove himself worthy of Mandalorian standards. So this fic was put out in March of 2020, which is like a solid 8 months before Luke was ever even on screen.
Nice.
So I think it's amazing that this is the most popular, and it was very Kripke. Very Kripke. Do you want to describe Kripke again?
For those of you who did not catch, I believe it was our last episode, talking about some more fun terms. Kripked is it's when you write a fic and it is sort of moving ahead of canon and you say X, Y, and Z is going to happen, and then the show catches up and that those things do happen. So you appear to be sort of clairvoyant in your prediction of where canon is going. It can also be used to sort of describe the canon itself sometimes as the fans got what they wanted, but for the most part it refers to the fics themselves being proving correct in where they thought the narrative was going.
Yeah. So I think the reason why this fic was or is the most popular is because at the time when Din Luke became just kind of this little supernova of like, oh my god, we're so excited about this ship. It was one of the only Din Luke fanfics on AO3. It was kind of a supply and demand thing. Because it came out March of 2020. So, and it was good too. That's the thing. It's a really good fit. Let me read you the quote that I have here. All at once, he realizes what the child wanted to do. He simply couldn't manage it yet. Dropping his hood back down around his shoulders, Luke lets the bright, unforgiving sun cast down on him. He takes a moment, leveling out his breathing, and lets his gaze wander over the imposing structure in front of him. But the size of it doesn't matter. That's always the lesson. It's nothing but sand and bone. No different than anything else. No different than lifting R2 or moving stones. The only thing weighing the beast down is the history of it and the importance that it carries to all of Mandalore. Luke's eyes roll back, fluttering shut, and his gloved hand extends out in front of him. It isn't immediate. There's no way it could be. Luke feels the ground shift under his feet, rumbling like an earthquake, and he ignores it. Sand cascades down like a waterfall, dusting his clothes and brushing against his cheeks. That doesn't matter either. What matters is what he feels and what he can do. He can lift the mythosaur. He can. His arm trembles, fingers twitching, but he keeps his reach firmly extended. There's nothing between him and this task but his own mind. When it's done, he feels it happen. It's as if a knot of tension untwists in the pit of Luke's stomach and sends serenity flowing through him in a wave. Opening his eyes, he confirms it, and the sight is something to behold. Floating in front of him, possessed by his outstretched hand, the mythosaur's skeleton floats in the air like some haunted holy specter. Luke holds it there just long enough to let out a laugh of pure, joyful relief, and his smile spreads hugely on his cheeks. That's from chapter 5. And I would say that it's a very good fic to read when you're trying to familiarize yourself with the kind of vernacular of Din Luke fanfic. It's very sweet. It's kind of understandable that it's the most popular fic because of the supply and demand thing, and it's a good way to familiarize yourself with it. I think my favorite thing about it is Din is the king of Mandalore. He's the man. He's the man. He's the Mandalore, and he is very tough when he needs to be, but he's kind of the perfect Mandalorian in the sense that he's always trying to fight for his family and his creed and his people. And he's never darked in. I don't like it when authors tend to make him darker than he actually is. He's a good man deep down, and I like that about him. His spark is good. Spoiler alert, I love that Din and Luke end up adopting Finn when Finn is just a little boy.
Aww.
Yeah, they stop a first order shipment of children to somewhere, and they adopt every one of them because obviously that's what Mandalorians would do. They adopt anyone they can. They call them foundlings.
Mm-hmm.
And Din was a foundling. He almost died, but he got saved. His parents died right in front of him, and he almost died, but the Mandalorian saved him, and then he became a Mandalorian. And that's also why he hates droids. Fun fact, Din hates droids.
Awkward.
I know, because Luke has friends who are droids, C-3PO and R2-D2, and BB-8 too, later on. But yeah, I love that they adopt Finn alongside Grogu. It's just kind of perfect full circle. Yeah, it's a great fic. So, next category, my favorite is To Build a Home by Subtlehysteria.
Okay.
Let me read you the summary. No more relationships. Din had vowed this to himself after what happened with Xi'an. And while Luke seems nice, he really does, he was also his son's teacher. Besides, Din wasn't comfortable with opening himself up to someone new again. All of his time either went towards Grogu or running his new security business. He was happy with their routine, happy with just the two of them in their house and his too loud family barging in every Sunday for dinner. He was happy. Really, he was. So why was there a small part of him that wished Luke could be here with him for this? So when I was first reading this fic, I was really sad that there was only ever going to be a first time that I could read it. And there are fics like that, I think, in every fandom for people who are reading. Yeah, you have some, right? This is, it's only 4 chapters. Basically, it's Din he owns a bodyguard company. This one has both bodyguard Din and kindergarten Luke, teacher Luke. So it's also my favorite kindergarten teacher Luke, though, I will say. It's basically a wonderful description of found family, because Luke is dealing with a family that he doesn't particularly care for. Anakin and Padme are alive, and Leia has Han, and Luke is just kind of, he loves his job, he loves being a kindergarten teacher and helping kids, and he loves the people that he works with. Finn is actually a teacher at his school and is dating Poe, obviously. It's very, you really get to know a lot of the side characters in this fic because all of them are there. Every Sunday they all get together and hang out and eat dinner, and eventually Luke and Din become friends, and so Luke comes over and everybody's just like, hey, you guys are good together, that kind of stuff. But it's just like, it's kind of nothing really bad happens, and for some reason I just really, really like it when characters that I love from a story can just like have a normal life. I like seeing that. And this is one of those fics where you just get to see them slowly but surely fall in love with each other. And yeah, let me read you the quote. It's pretty emblematic of what you'll read, I think. Are you the teacher? I am, Luke says, standing. He brushes down his sweater, trying to rid it of any unwanted wrinkles. For some reason, he really wants to impress Kara. She hums, giving him a very obvious look up and down. You're not what I expected. Oh? Kara gives him another considering hum, meeting Luke's gaze once more. You're gonna be good for him. For Grogu? Luke questions. Kara releases an unladylike snort, flicking her braid over her shoulder. Sure. Kara's character is awesome in the show. Terrible actor. There's some weird stuff around that, but I love her character in this fic. It's pretty awesome. I love everybody's character in this fic. I love the fic. It's great.
So I'm assuming that in The Mandalorian, not all of Din's characters that he interacts with are human as we would understand it.
No.
So in this fic, is everybody human?
Yes. So usually I find that most of the authors tend to write, if it's an AU, they just turn Grogu into a little human boy.
Okay.
Who, in this fic, I think he's mute. He uses sign language to communicate. And one of the reasons why I didn't really like Luke in this fic is because Luke learns sign language for him. And it's very sweet. And Luke has a cat named R2D2. It's perfect. So, yeah, it's very sweet because Grogu is a little human boy who likes to wear this hat that has big ears. And he has a little backpack that is a frog. And Grogu eats a lot of frogs in canon.
Aww.
But in this fic, he just loves frogs. He just likes the aesthetic. Lots of kids love like a specific animal, so it really works. If it's canon compliant or canon divergence or somewhere along those lines, Grogu is always the little alien Grogu. There's one that we'll be talking about in which it's a middle ground. It's kind of weird.
Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting the decisions that some fic writers make regarding that.
Would you say that in this fandom there's a fairly even split between canon aesthetic versus completely AU or human AU? What would you say the ratio is?
I would say that there's more canon compliant fics than less. People love the Grogu character design. They just love it. Okay. And they especially want to be able to use his little tiny personality fit into that little tiny body in fic, I think. It's kind of more abnormal that my favorite fic happened to be about a Grogu that it was human. The world building is very interesting. I think once you start reading the Din Luke stuff, you'll find yourself kind of really realizing that some authors just don't want to put that much thought into the world building. They just want to be like, this is it. Figure it out, you know. But others, like this, To Build a Home is kind of in that middle ground because it's almost like everything they're talking about is on one planet, but the quote-unquote countries or the names of planets that were in Star Wars are countries or different places on the same planet. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so my favorite WIP. I thought I would do a WIP just to make everybody super happy. Naberrie Blooms by Zombified419. It is a WIP. It's very long. It's not done yet. We have no idea how many chapters there are going to be, but I think it has almost 20 chapters already. But it is a canon divergence AU. It's as if, what if Vader never became Vader? What if Anakin was just Anakin and the Jedi never fell and Luke grew up to be a Jedi?
Wait,
he
so
owns a flower shop.
Luke still exists.
Luke still exists. Everybody exists. Nobody dies, basically.
Well,
Nobody's dead.
I guess my question for that is if Anakin never becomes Vader, but he still has children. Anyway, I'm going to assume that that's glossed over and unimportant.
Yeah, it's not a thing. The author doesn't really talk about that, but the Luke is a person that exists, yes. And then Anakin is Anakin, and Luke becomes a Jedi still, but he has a flower shop.
Aww.
So, and that's how he meets Din. And I love flower shop AUs. I actually love them. So this is like a really wonderful WIP to like, it got updated, you know, that kind of thing. Let me read you the summary. Some may think it odd that a flower shop could be run by a Jedi. Luke disagrees. Luke blurts, all semblance of calm he had been working to maintain gone. He fumbles to tuck some of his hair behind his ear as a distraction before he tries again. My name is Luke. Luke doesn't tell him he's the only one that runs the shop with his droid. There's no need to ask for him ever, but Luke wants him to. The Mandalorian nods again. Thank you. Then, almost a forced afterthought. Luke. After, he's gone, the bell tinkling over the door and sunlight shining off of the polished armor as he steps out. Luke leans over the counter, stretching to catch a glimpse of the man again, before the crowds of Galactic City swallow him from sight. It's a really good canon divergence AU, I would say. It's a little bit plotting. Like,
Mm.
the story probably could go a little faster, but because it's updated every week or so,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the story can get away with an author, and I totally understand. But the one thing I think is that the author should become a candy shop owner, okay? And I know that that sounds very strange. Let me explain.
Please
So,
do.
in this fic, the author describes these fantastic sounding, interesting, different, not real candies that an alien culture, an entire different like world full of all of these different cultures of aliens and worlds would make. So there's this one candy that I really, really want to try, and it's a jellied like gummy candy that has little bits of pop rocks in it. And that sounds delicious. I sometimes reread some of the stuff about the candy in this fic because that's how good it sounds. There's other types that the author makes too, but man. And they also wrote an entire chapter of them walking around it's like a museum for flowers, basically.
Huh.
And
Cool.
yeah, they like talk about all of these different flowers from all of these different planets, and it's fascinating. And what's cool about it is like Luke sells flowers, so he knows about it, so he can tell Din about it, and it's really sweet.
Aw.
It's a slow burn, but
Mm-hmm.
like it's not tooth rotting fluff, but it's you like being on the ride with it. It's nice, and I can't wait to see where it goes. I think I'll just say the quote: "That isn't what we agreed to." Luke shrugs. "My shop, my rules. That isn't smart business. I'll survive." The Mandalorian doesn't speak for a moment, his visor locked on Luke. Luke sets his chin on his palm and stares back, eyebrows lifting in challenge. The slight raise of the counter from the rest of the floor puts Luke a little over eye level with the other man. He tries to find the Mandalorian's eyes through the visor while the silence stretches on. "A trade, instead." The man finally speaks. His voice sounds rushed. That's from chapter 2. If you want to, deal with a whip, because I know that whips can be heartbreaking for some people. They really want to see the end of the story. I think that whoever's listening to this should definitely read that fic. It's very sweet, but not
So
just because of the candy.
this unfortunately has nothing to do with that awesome sounding fic, but it has just occurred to me: Mandalorians don't take off their helmets.
No,
At
they
least
do
at
not.
least Din's particular group of Mandalorians don't. Is that for
Mhm.
everything? Is this like a socks during sex thing? Or do they have exceptions? Because I'm assuming because they like found families, they do like just
Yeah.
producing children too.
So, fanfic writers for Din Luke have kind of a hard time with that because in canon there is some evidence to suggest that if you have a foundling, if you are somebody who has a family or somebody who you love and are married to,
Mm-hmm.
then it's okay to take off your helmet with only them. He does take off his helmet to say goodbye to Grogu, and Luke is the only person beside Grogu who's ever seen his face. So, as Luke is holding Grogu, apparently Din has the compulsion to take off his helmet so that Grogu knows what he looks like because he's never taken off his helmet with Grogu before.
Mm-hmm.
So there is evidence to suggest that the Mandalorian creed that Din comes from, they do take off their helmets for family or for people who they
Okay.
absolutely trust in. But because of that little side door that the canon created, a lot of Mandalorian and Din Luke fic writers, they have to figure out a way to create a relationship that is worthy enough for Din to take off his helmet, basically.
Ah.
Yeah. And in a lot of these instances, Din and Grogu are already father and son, and he's already taken off his helmet for him. In that way, it kind of creates the precedent that if he loves Luke enough, if he trusts Luke enough, then he will do the same. And usually that's kind of the turning point in their relationship. So it's a really easy theme for authors to use to describe
Mm-hmm.
or to really show that Din trusts Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty interesting. One of my favorite fan art people is Grogu,
Mm-hmm.
who is Ngozi. She did the Check Please stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you've read it, it's great hockey, gay, fun pie time. Sounds weird, but it's great. She has another Tumblr blog called Ngrogu, and she does a lot of fan art for it. It's really good stuff, and in a lot of these things, she actually did like a not safe for work comic. And he had his helmet on the entire time, so it's definitely a thing. It happens all the time that he still has his helmet on, and then they still get freaky. And Mandalorians still kiss by touching each other's foreheads with each like other forehead. Yeah, it's freaking adorable. But you can also just like blindfold the other person, and that happens a lot too. So that's the answer to that question.
Awesome. Before you head on to your next fic, I have one follow-on question to that, which is, I know in a lot of other fandoms, when you have some form of a mask or a helmet or something that obscures your face, they have a lot of sort of identity shenanigans that go on. I'm assuming because of what I'm hearing, that's not something that's super popular in this fandom.
Not at all. He never takes off his helmet. Like there would be no way for somebody to take the helmet so that somebody else could be him.
Or mistake him for someone else.
The thing about, so it's called Beskar, or not Beskar, his armor, can't remember the Mandoa name for it. His armor is made out of Beskar, which is like, it's the hardest stuff, and it can, even lightsabers can't hit through it, basically. What's cool about Mandalorians, there's a lot of stuff that's really cool about Mandalorians, but one of the things that's cool about Mandalorians is the fact that their armor is an extension of who they are, and because of that, each armor is very personalized. So there's the armorer in every clan, and the armorer is kind of somewhat the de facto leader of the group because they protect everybody. They're the person who makes the armor for everyone, and it's just not something where you never change armor with somebody. It's your exoskeleton as a Mandalorian.
It's like heraldry in medieval times. You had your heraldry that was personalized to you, and you did not swap with other people.
Yes, and there's also this thing called the signet, where it's like through your adventures, you defeat a specific creature or a group of people or something to that effect, and you use that thing as your symbol as a Mandalorian. Grogu and Din together, before they even started this father-son bonding, defeated a mudhorn, which is a very, very large, furry, kind of rhino-esque, scary animal.
Okay.
That almost killed Din, but because of Grogu, he didn't die. Yeah, you really should watch the show, man. It's really good. But the signet also is a way to differentiate between the two, and nobody, unless they are part of the Mudhorn clan, can ever wear that signet.
Okay.
So that's also a way for authors to make sure that the audience or that the reader knows that Luke is really part of this clan because he gets the signet, the Mudhorn signet, on like a bracelet or a necklace, or it's part of his armor or something. Anyway, I found a fic that could only be in this fandom, in my opinion. And it's titled Yoda's Academy for Lil Padawans. And I'm pronouncing Lil like that because that's how it's spelled. Lil. Not little, but Lil. Yoda's Academy for Lil Padawans by MissDinahDarling, which, by the way, I love that username. MissDinahDarling is a great username. Let me read the summary. Being a new student is hard. Being a new student whilst your socially awkward father avoids the school at all costs and your new teacher pines uselessly over a man he's never met before is even worse. But by God, Grogu is going to get through this. And that's the end of that summary. It's pretty short, but it's very cute. What's cool about this fic is Grogu is kind of like, you're seeing the mind of Grogu. He can't talk. He doesn't really communicate because in this fic, he is his little alien self. Even though this is a kindergarten fic. Kindergarten teacher Luke. So this could only be in this fandom, in my opinion, because it is the epitome of found family. The epitome of an adoption story. The first two chapters, there's only 3 chapters of this fic. The first 2 chapters are good. I do like reading them. In the first chapter, Luke ends up meeting all of Din's friends, all of the side characters in the show, except for Din. And he starts emailing Din and they become friends. And then they go on a date. And in this world, it's kind of in the Star Wars world, but not really. Din is not a Mandalorian, but he wears a motorcycle helmet all the time because it makes him feel comfortable. And he's a mechanic. But the thing that makes this fic, it's kind of a gen fic in my opinion, because the reason why I love this fic is the third chapter, which is about Din and Grogu meeting. It's about Din adopting Grogu, basically. It's a gen chapter, basically. Like, Luke is not in it at all. And it literally makes the fic, in my opinion. It is so good. I want way more of what I read on chapter 3 of this fic. It is exactly what I imagine a found family to be, like how a found family kind of exists between an adopted child and their parent in like today, kind of. Obviously, there's different weird things like Grogu's a little alien boy, but I don't know. It's like the best quality about Din Luke and about the Mandalorians and about the show is the concept of found family being so intrinsically linked within all of these characters. It's the Mandalorians' uniquely specific and almost religious theme, and that's why I chose this fic, because the first and second chapters are great, but the third one is just so amazingly found family. And if you have to read anything that's kind of gen in Din Luke, please read the third chapter of Yoda's Academy for Little Padawans.
That sounds really sweet. And
it is
sweet
so
in
sweet.
a different way than the previous ones. I like hearing about, and then there's this one that's completely different that I really like. It's always nice to know that there's like variety that you get to pick from, because I've been in some small fandoms where it's like, I love this, but also this is all there is.
Yeah, true. I think what's cool about Star Wars fan fiction is that literally the entire universe is open, but you kind of have these themes and characters that are kind of like, they're in a sandbox, a play box, right, of the universe, but the characters and the themes themselves are very like strict. And it makes for very interesting content. And obviously it gets into the AU stuff and it's literally anything you want, but within specific fandoms themselves, and I agree, sometimes, especially when it's new, sometimes it's all the same thing. My favorite AU is Good Idea by spqr. I know I wrecked this in our first couple episodes, but it's so good, I need to talk about it more. I think I'm going to read you the quote. Din Djarin? Here, says Din. He looks scared, is the first thing Luke thinks. Which is strange, because he's a big guy. He's got some tattoos. Even though he's attractive, he's not the sort of pretty that can get you in trouble down here like Luke is. But he has big brown eyes, soft, scared eyes, and Luke became a lawyer for one reason and one reason only, to help the people who needed it most. That's why he's in the tombs at 4 a.m, a first year at legal aid, working the fucking lobster shift, to help people, and hopefully not get puked on again because he's all out of friends to lend him extra suits. It's about Luke, who is a lawyer and helps Din get out of jail. He was defending a girl who got drugged at Din's bar, and he kind of beat the shit out of 4 dudes with a broken bottle. And he's part of the Mandalorian gang, because it's an AU, and it's set here. But Grogu is still an alien. So this is the one I was talking about, how it's like weird that sometimes the author just doesn't give a shit, I think, and is like, no, Grogu's still gonna be an alien, but it's on Earth.
Okay then.
And I'm cool with it, because Grogu is so cute, I kind of don't care. There's a lot of really good hurt comfort in this fic, without it getting too... Sometimes hurt comfort can get so melodramatic, and this is not one of those. I love this fic. It's my favorite AU that I have found. A lot of found family in this one. Very badass Din, obviously, from what I said, but also very badass Luke. He's a great lawyer, and he has opinions, and I like that about him. I will say that what's interesting about this fic is kind of the dynamics between the father and son. So there's obviously Din and Grogu, but Anakin is alive in this fic. And the dynamics between Luke and Anakin are fascinating when compared to the dynamics between Din and Grogu. Please read it. It's very good. Love it. Okay.
Is that something that happens in more human AUs a lot, where they're just like, Anakin and Padme are still alive? Or is that just a coincidence?
I think a lot of fic writers for Din Luke really subscribe to the idea that because Din and Luke are together, they're in a better timeline. And that usually means Anakin and Padme are alive.
Okay.
So in almost all of them, I find unless it's canon compliant, they are alive. But I haven't read all of them. There are like
Yeah.
750 or 770 works. But yeah, from what I've seen, just from what I've read, yeah, I would say that more likely than not, if it is an AU, then yes, Padme and Anakin are alive. Last one. So
Awesome.
I think that this fic needs more love from the fandom. It's called Setting Suns by Snapdragon Pop 007 or 007. Let me read you the summary. The Jedi and the Mandalorians have been at a physical war for decades, but their hatred for each other has run far longer and far deeper, and the fighting between them has grown bitter and harsh. Both sides have become weary and desperate for an end, and the Jedi plan to siege Mandalore to put an end to this war for good. Just as they are about to launch their assault, General Anakin Skywalker's son goes missing. And whoop-de-doo, he finds himself on Mandalore with amnesia. It's an amnesia fic. Which is a very fun. Amnesia fics are super fun, in my opinion. It is a canon divergence AU, so Anakin and Padme are alive. Padme is still the queen of Naboo, and Leia's alive. And in this one, it's fun because Luke is trans.
Oh.
And it's kind of, it makes sense once you get deeper, and it kind of doesn't matter until the very end of the fic. But yeah, Luke's trans, and let me read you the quote. "Do you know where Mandalore is?" the man asked. His voice was soft and quiet and patient and full of a practiced calmness. Luke shook his head. His brain felt like it was rattling around in his skull. Tears welled up in his eyes, and Luke dropped his hands and tangled them in the blanket in his frustration. No matter how hard Luke thought, he couldn't remember. Mandalore was important. He knew that, and he knew that this was something he should know. But no matter how hard Luke thought, all he came up with was a more painful headache. "It's okay," the man was quick to soothe him. "You had a pretty serious head injury. You're probably not going to remember some things right away." He paused. Then, "We're in the Outer Rim, only a few parsecs from Tatooine." Tatooine. Luke knew Tatooine. So he has amnesia, he finds himself in a room, and he meets Din and a couple other people, and Obi-Wan is there, and
Interesting.
it's almost like a Romeo-Juliet kind of thing if Juliet had amnesia and found herself with the Capulets.
I'm pretty sure that she is a Capulet and that she
Okay.
would be with the Montagues.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah, okay, there we go. She was. What if Luke, or what if Julia ends up with the Montagues? I would say the characterization of Anakin and Padme and Leia are really, really good in this fic. These are who the people would be in this situation, and Din is so sweet. He's such a good Mandalore too. Like, he's so good at being kind of like the first fic. Like, I love it when he's king, but he's not lordly. He's just himself, but he happens to also be a king. And I really think more people need to read this fic because it doesn't have like near the amount of kudos that Separate Ways has, and I think it's just as good. That's my rec for the week. Every one of these are recs. Do you have a rec, B?
I did not.
That's okay.
Yeah, I figured that you had it more than covered this week, and
Yep.
I will have it more than covered next week. So, for those of you looking for something to read, I hope that you liked something you heard here.
All of these will be in the show notes with info, and
So will the
yeah.
the Tumblr you mentioned with the fan art.
Oh yeah, definitely, and Grogu will definitely be on there. I will say, I think that one of the reasons why I really loved Setting Suns by Snapdragon Pop 007 is because Luke deals with a head injury in here, and I just recently went through a pretty bad bout of vertigo for like a couple weeks straight, and got really thin and had to go to the ER basically. And I completely understand where he's coming from. He's so, I didn't get amnesia obviously, but like he experiences the same thing I experienced. He throws up a lot, he's really dizzy, like, but he still gets through everything, and I felt for him, you know. I felt like this was a character that I could truly empathize with, and it made me feel better reading it. That might be too much information, but yeah, I liked Setting Suns was kind of the perfect fic for me at the time that I was reading it.
I have mixed feelings on the amnesia trope, but I'm actually super fascinated by the idea of an amnesiac trans person. That sounds like
Right?
a really, really interesting exploration of identity.
This fic does not really do that
That's fair.
because Luke doesn't even know who he is. This fic does not really go into the concept of that. It's almost kind of and he's trans at the very end. You don't really know until the very end. There's no inkling that he is, which obviously that would be the case in any person's life who is trans. But you'll see what I mean if you read the end. Should I just spoil it?
I don't mind.
Okay.
If listeners have gotten to this point and don't want spoilers, I'm sure they can skip the next bit.
Yeah. Luke gets pregnant.
That's sort of where I figured that was going.
Yeah. But that's how you know. The author didn't even put the tag that Luke was trans until putting out the last 3 chapters. So the tag wasn't even in the tags until that happened. And there's no shade being thrown at anybody right now, trans people or the author. But I will say that if you want an amnesia fic with a trans person talking about the trans experience and figuring out who you are gender-wise in that way, this is not the fic for you, but it's still pretty good. Anyway, yeah, so that was fun. I had a really fun time talking about this fandom and this kind of culture that I've kind of thrown myself into with the whole Mandalorians. It's super fun to read.
I definitely enjoyed hearing and learning about it. I feel like there's definitely some things that I'm gonna go investigate now. I hope that everybody else was either informed or they had a fun time learning about something they already like. If you guys have any questions about this fandom, then please contact us
at mandbepresents@gmail.com, and that will be in the show notes as well.
I guess we'll see you next week
on Fangirls Anonymous. Bye!